thing I want to mention is that, as has been touched on just a few moments ago, this is the time when the state legislature comes into session. It happens once every 2 years, and the state legislature comes up with a budget for the following 2 years, which they call the biennium. And Texas has a part-time legislature. It has a legislature that sits for 6 months every 2 years, and then the next year they're off. And so this is the key moment. And as you all know, there's huge budget challenges all over the United States. And despite what you may have heard during the gubernatorial election, Texas was not spared from these, and we have an unbelievably enormous budget crisis in the state of Texas to the tune of necessary cuts of up to $26 billion. And that's based on what the controller of the state of Texas released just a few weeks ago. And following that, the House, and then shortly after that, the Senate, produced a sort of a draft bill for or not a bill, but a look at what they expected the budget to look like and what the request would be. And they had huge cuts to public education. And so very quickly, sharp people have done the calculations to determine what that means for all the districts. And what that means for the HISD is a range, based on the numbers that the state provided, by the way, a range of cuts for the HISD of up to $350 million per year. And that's 20% of our budget. Now, we have never in modern history have budget cuts of that size. There is no way to compare that to any difficulties we've ever weathered in the past. Now, I'm not saying that that will actually happen, because the state legislators are now going to do what they were elected to do, which is to make difficult decisions and discuss things and determine what they're going to do. And they need to hear from you in order to know what the values of society and their constituents are in this important process. And if they don't hear from you, they're going to make assumptions on what they think that you believe. And so this is a key point of time for you to contact your legislators. And so I want to say one thing that's really important, and anyone who just heard that number of up to 20% of our budget will know that no matter what happens, no matter what the state does, there's going to be cuts. And there are going to be cuts in HISD. I mean, we don't know how much they're going to be yet, and we have a chief financial officer and a board of education that's working very hard on trying to figure out what they can be and what different levels of cuts we might be able to do with different levels of funding. But we're going to have cuts, and they're going to be large cuts. And so we're going to have to try to spread them the right way, be very smart about it. So when you contact Austin, if I were you, I would not start with some kind of a comment like you shouldn't cut education at all. I mean, you can do that if you want, but I mean, there are going to be cuts to education. But on the other hand, there's a really key point that I think is important, and that is that the state has a constitutional requirement to provide for adequate education to all its people. It's right in the Constitution, and it's Article 1. And there are very few things that are in there, by the way. You know, social services isn't in there. But education is. So education has an especially important central role in state responsibility. And the second thing is that that partnership defined by the Constitution has been further defined historically. And we can say that if you look over post-World War II history, I mean, so really all the way back to World War II, with the exception really of the very recent few years, the state has paid about 50% of the cost of education. And that's what most of us think of as partnership. 50-50, that sounds like a partner. But when somebody slips and doesn't do their share anymore, and they slip to 45 and they slip to 40, that doesn't feel much like a partnership anymore, and it's not. It's a failed partnership when you fall below 50%. And in Houston today, HISD, the state only pays 32% of the cost of education. And the reason is that they expect local top property taxpayers to pay the rest. Now, there are various reasons for that. They'll say that we're a property wealthy district, and they have various calculations to show that's the case. Basically, they're saying if you're wealthy enough, if you, the taxpayers of Houston, are wealthy enough to pay for more of the education, we're going to make you do it, and we're going to pay less of our share. That's what it means. They can be complicated about it, and it is complicated, but that's the bottom line of what it means. So we have a failed partnership, and it's getting worse. 32% is the way it is now, but the new budget that's being shown and talked about right now is going down from there. And so that's where they were before the $300 million in cuts to the HISD. So what do you think it's going to look like after they cut a couple of $100 million of our budget away? The state's going to fall way down from 32% into the 20s somewhere. That's a completely failed partnership. And as taxpayers, we have to insist that they not do that. We have to insist that the state do its part as a partner to pay for education. And we have to, at the same time, in my view, say that we have to do our part too. So yeah, there are going to be some cuts. And it's the job of the HISD Board of Education and Administration, listening to our constituents, to try to decide among all the things we can do, the things we can cut, the difficulties we're willing to bear, what we're willing to do. But I think we need to be able to say to Austin at the same time, we're willing to do our part. Are you willing to do yours? Are you willing to be equal partners in the funding of education in Texas? Because if you're not, we have a really big problem with that. And so I hope that you will all keep your ears to the news on the subject of school finance. It is a very critical issue, and everything is going to be decided in the next 4 months. This is the time. It's the beginning of the session. The committees have just been chosen, and they are just now really getting to work on it, and their ears are open. They do want to hear from you, and it's important that they do. So what I suggest you do is to keep tuned, because your elected officials, including myself and the other members of the board, will try to let you know, as our constituents, where you can go to get information about the situation and where you can go to in order to have your voice heard. And although the district's not going to tell you in particular what to say or what to do and what to think, because the district is not allowed to do that, it's very important that the trustees let you know where you can find that information and where you can do something about it. Some of the sites that you can visit include schoolpriority.com, it's schoolpriority.com, raiseyourhandtexas.com, texasforward.com, and I believe this Save Our Schools. That's saveourschools.com. And that's just a few, and I know from my constituents, and all my colleagues are welcome to share, I'm planning to put together a group of links of sites that people can go to. They can sign up for mailing lists. They can sign petitions if they happen to agree with what those sites say. But the point is, it makes it possible for you to more easily get in contact with your elected representatives so that they can do what they want to do, which is to represent your views in Austin. And so I hope you'll do that. The school system needs it, and the children in the school system are counting on your help. Thank you.
HISD is the largest school district in Texas, serving more than 202,000 students at nearly 300 schools. Providing our children with a quality education is essential for their individual success, but it's also vital to the success of our city and its workforce. Unfortunately, the state is recommending a substantial cut to public education, more than $9 billion over the next 2 years. This is the worst budget cut to public education in Texas since World War II, and it comes at a time when Texas schools are being asked to educate an additional 84,000 students. So what do these cuts mean for the Houston Independent School District? Preliminary reports say the loss could be anywhere between $200 and nearly $350 million next year. That represents 15 to 20% of HISD's budget. Cuts this steep will have a far-reaching impact on schools. Teaching jobs will be eliminated, as well as administrative and teachers' aides positions. Class sizes will increase. Field trips, fine arts programs, debate teams, athletics, and other popular programs will be on the chopping block. And school closures and consolidations will have to be considered. On top of the $200 to $350 million potential cuts to HISD, the state is also proposing to eliminate an additional $26 million in grants that support our full-day pre-kindergarten classes, classroom technology, tutoring for struggling students, and incentive pay that has helped lure top teachers to our city. Put bluntly, the school your child attends today may look very different in the fall. Here's what HISD is doing to prepare during these extraordinary times. It's making significant cuts to central office, reviewing transportation, custodial, and police operations to see if there are less expensive ways to provide services, and reviewing all district-wide activities for possible reductions. HISD is making every effort to protect classrooms, but there's no way the district can cut hundreds of millions of dollars in spending without having a major impact on schools. Even if HISD were to completely eliminate all custodial services, all transportation services, and the entire HISD police department, that would equal less than $100 million. At a minimum, HISD would still have to find another $100 million to cut in spending. That's about what it costs to pay for nearly 1,900 teachers. At the individual school level, a $100 million cut would result in a loss of approximately $500 per student. Houston schools are funded based on the number of students enrolled. Schools get extra funds for students who are at risk, gifted and talented, non-native English speakers, or students who receive special education services. Small schools receive extra funding, as do magnet schools. Principals then combine all their funding sources and determine how to best spend the money on their campus, including the kind of staff they hire or the programs they choose to offer. A reduction of $500 per student would be devastating, and every school in HISD would be impacted. The proposed reductions to HISD's budget come at a time when the day-to-day costs to operate the school district have increased, and health insurance costs and gasoline prices are going up. In addition, utility costs are slated to rise with the passage of the Renew Houston drainage law. In HISD, our Board of Education, our staff, our parents, and our community are committed to preparing our children for a bright future so they can succeed in a global economy. To do that, we have to ensure that they have the skills to compete with their peers in the state, across the nation, and around the world. Now is the time to strengthen our investment in education, not diminish it. Our children are depending on it and deserve no less.